are soldiers on a battlefield, well within the range of a fierce enemy's fire. They fight for an idea, a simple, good idea. The idea that freedom can be a real thing today in the 20th century, and for people whose skins are brown. They are fighting the Japanese for the Northern Indies, for 3,000 islands. The area for which they fight is, to most of us, surprisingly large. But it is more impressive as a setting for an idea, which is also bigger than most people think. The East Indies are blessed by nature. Their land is rich and yields abundant crops many times each year. The most coveted luxuries of life grow here in commonplace profusion. The tea of Java was once served to a third of the world. The staples of life are here too. Rice, to a majority of the peoples of this world, is another word for food. The sawas, or wet rice fields of these islands, can supply strength and nourishment to millions. In modern times, the discoveries of the Dutch agricultural scientists help to increase the yield obtained by the traditional methods. For tradition is strong in these people. Traditions that the Portuguese and French and Dutch explorers called savage when they first came upon the islands in the 15th century. But the Dutch have learned better since those days. They have learned to appreciate the sensitivity and culture of a people who are different from themselves. They have realized that these are highly civilized peoples. People whose culture is deep-rooted and coordinated through their habits of daily life. The beautiful batiks that are worn by the ceremonial dancers are also worn by the audience. They are local products made possible by a dyeing process known here hundreds of years before it was used by Europeans. The lovely designs are cut into everyday clothes for grown-ups and children alike. Every aspect of their life reveals the same influence of tradition. Their designs portray gods and goddesses, or evil spirits. For in ancient cultures like these, the arts are closely connected with religious forms that are even older. The flowers that are prepared so carefully are not for the dining room table, but for the temple altars. They were once part of a ceremony that has long since been erased from the minds of men. For while new religions have come in a rhythm set by various invasions from the mainland, the symbolism of the flowers became part of the people, and today is still an expression of their devotion. For the Indonesian is still living his tradition. His mythical heroes still inspire him to strength and spiritual dignity. He still lives in the shadow of fabulous monuments, architectural masterpieces like the temples to Buddha in Java and Bali. The devils of the Bayang dances were real once, but today they depend on the gamelan orchestra to help cast their spell over an entranced audience. And in the art of the great dancers, it is hard to tell where tradition stops and virtuosity begins. the dances have all been trained from their early childhood. Each posture has its meaning, each grimace its significance. The dancers are much like priests of a special cult, passing on their skills and disciplines from one generation to another, down through the years. Down through the years in art and in living has passed the legacy of pride in a graceful, dignified way of life. A way of life that was once sufficient. In a wild and incredibly beautiful corner of the world, in a land of volcanoes and other turbulent expressions of a rich and colorful nature. This was Java once, but it could not stay this way. It could not remain secluded in a world that was hungry for rubber and tea and tin, in a world that badly needed the quinine and manganese and oil. And so once again it changed with changing times. Batavia is no drowsy tropical village, but a modern capital and business metropolis, heart and nerve center of the vast territories united under the name of the Netherlands East Indies. For it is the Netherlands that has guided the Indonesians to their place in the modern world. In many parts of Java, the jungle and rice fields have given way to the great industrial plants that a modern nation needs for survival in a world balanced on economic scales. And the peoples of tradition have been taught new skills that would amaze and confound their craftsman ancestors. Skills that are prized and well paid by a machine-age world. Skills that can turn the raw commodities of the earth into useful articles. Skills that can win the rewards of weekly wages and improved living conditions. Only with these skills can man be master of the machine and make it work for the common good. Dutch craftsmen and Dutch engineers have brought the Indonesians up to date. But the people have not forsaken the land to work in the factories, for such migration may lead to economic slavery. By Netherlands law, not even Dutch settlers may buy the land that has been assigned to the people for growing their food. And most of the small rice sawas have been in the possession of one family or one community for many generations. Not all of the agricultural activities of the islands are on this small scale. Companies of many nations have been encouraged to establish large commercial operations on leased lands, and it is the products of such plantations that furnish most of the island's exports. The plantation hands are paid wages, but whenever possible, the arrangement also provides for enough time off to enable them to work their own lands. Thus, the change from the old to the new is a gradual one that does not hurt the very people it is supposed to help. Balance and moderation have been the keynote of Dutch policy in this great experiment involving 60 million lives. A visit to a typical Javanese community reveals that the old way of living has been preserved wherever it lends itself to modern conditions. But it is never allowed to block. The young generation is proud of its traditional heritage, but it is determined to add to it in 20th century forms, in terms of technical and social improvement. Good schools, and even more, an ambitious, zealous youth are first steps toward true democracy. Their future, and the future of the idea of responsible government for them and their fellow millions. These are the reasons they have turned down the tinseled promises of the invader. That is what the war is about in the skies of the Malay Straits and the Java Seas. Hundreds of young Indonesians are flying with their Dutch, American, and British comrades in the planes seeking out the Jap invader. They are themselves products of an idea they are willing to die for. Their fight and the sacrifices of their allies on the oceans and in the jungles below will keep that idea alive.